Welcome to Moby Mondays. We are excited that you have joined us for success in our second or third career acts. We have the wonderful Deborah Gray Young as our host this evening. Deborah Gray Young is the managing partner of D. Gray Young Incorporated, a consulting firm providing coaching and consulting services to corporations and individuals. She is a former vice president, media director of the leading multicultural marketing communications firm. And over the course of her career, she has worked on several Fortune 500 brands, including Toyota, Walmart, McDonald's, General Mills, and Miller Brewing. Deborah is an ICF accredited coach, working primarily with mid to senior level professional women of color to help them better manage their personal and professional brands to achieve their next levels of success. She is the author of three books that are available on Amazon and Kindle, and we will have those links in the chat so that you can pick those up. Deborah, thank you so much for being a part of tonight's wonderful panel discussion.
Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I am excited to have this conversation with our esteemed guests. We have um, four guests joining us this afternoon or this evening, and I am going to ask them to take 30 seconds and introduce themselves and tell us what they do now and what did they do in their former life. So let's start with you, John.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm John Clemons, and I'm a communications consultant and adjunct professor at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and Loyola University in New Orleans. I'm formerly a newspaper reporter, and I was an editor at Black Enterprise Magazine and a former corporate communications executive at a number of Fortune 500 companies, including Raytheon, AT&T, Marriott International, and Walmart. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. Trez,
I would have to go after him, wouldn't I?
of course.
My name, hello, pleasure to be here. My name is Trez Van Pugh III. I'm the founder and CEO of Sip and Savor Hospitality Group, which is the owner and parent company of 5 coffee houses located in the Chicagoland area. Previous to being the CEO, I was a high-level manager at the post office for a while, and my last career was I was a federal law enforcement officer.
Okay, we'll come back to that, Trez. um, Matt.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Matt Adams. I am currently a cultural strategist at Sparks and Honey in New York City. And before that, I used to be an account executive at Leo Burnett in Chicago. And before that, I used to be a brand manager for a startup company called True Color Bandages.
True Color.
True Color Bandages.
Oh, True Color. Oh, okay.
Yeah, bandages
True
for
Color.
darker skin tones.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you all
And
for having me.
Heather is from AARP, which is one of our sponsors tonight.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Heather Tinsley-Fix. It's so great to be here with you guys. I am a senior advisor at AARP, and I engage with the employer community on the value of older workers, the value of age diversity in general. So we really strongly believe that all ages bring something to the table for the organizations they work for. And most of the work that I do is to help organizations build age inclusion into their DEI work. The workforce is generationally diverse. As you can see, this panel is generationally diverse, and we're living longer, which is kind of what this panel is going to be talking about. So I am sort of on the employer side, the HR and the DEI side of the house, helping, giving, employers tools to become more age inclusive.
Well, we're going to be counting on you to give us some insight into what employers are looking for, and then also what are you hearing from members as to their motivation for their second or third act. So
Yep.
let's dive right in. So we know that rewirement is like the new buzzword, right? Because a lot of people are not retiring and not going home and sitting in front of the television for hours on end. And there are a lot of different ways that work is taking shape. So we have this, literally explosion of work from home, and even companies that were totally against it are now, sort of bending their rules about that. So we see a lot of change in the workplace, and people, at not to mention what the great resignation, quiet quitting, all these cute little buzzwords. But
Mhm.
basically, they telegraph for us or to us that people are kind of tired of what they've been doing and looking to do something else. So I'm really excited to have John and Trez and Matt here. So, Matt, why don't we start with you, since you're the cultural strategist, and you can tell us a little bit about what the data is saying to you and to your agency's clients about what's going on with intergenerational workforce.
Yes. So I would just like to start off as a grounding measure when it comes to the economy. So, according to Gartner, 65% of employees have stated that the pandemic completely made them rethink their relationship to work. And on top of that, 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, which is also including those who are earning more than $100,000. So, that context right there is giving us a really good insight into the fact that people are trying to figure out what the rest of their lives look like on less of a dime. So, in the work that I've been doing on the future of work and what that means for people, it's really starting to focus on people reassessing their values and using their values as a foundation for the work that they want to do in the future. So, that's anywhere from a Gen Z or millennial like me all the way up to silent generation people who are looking to understand what does retirement look like for them in the long term. So those are a couple of data points that really stuck out to me right now, and I can share more as we go along as well.
When you talk about the data and the data points, one of the things that data is very rarely able to do is to give you a peek into why, right? What's the motivation? Have you been able to glean any whys out of that?
Yes. So I think a really pertinent piece of media here would be from Ari Wallach, which is a book called Long Path. And it's really thinking about the moment that we're in right now, which is an intertidal zone. So we're coming into a period of our lives where we are, because of increased interaction with social media and just having more understanding of like knowledge and data, we're actually seeing that people are no longer sitting with their jobs anymore. There's a lot more questioning around why are we doing work, because we're seeing in increased ways that the things that we've been doing for many years are not making sense anymore. So all of these contributing factors from a macro level to the United States and things that are going on with a lack of care for communities, all the way down to the micro level where people are trying to reassess how they relate to their family members when work has been taking up so much more of their life.
Mm.
So when we were talking about earlier about remote working, that also points to this change that we're seeing. People are understanding that I can be home and I can actually communicate with my family and support them in a way that I couldn't have before. So it's these little movements in this period of time that are completely reshaping how we go about doing business for the long haul.
So, Heather, does that correlate with what you are seeing from the membership?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, Matt's exactly right. So and you mentioned the great resignation and quiet quitting and all of that. So we know that quitting rates have been on the rise for the last 20 years, and the pandemic just accelerated that. And I think it really is due to this values-based, reevaluation of what do I want from a job? What am I willing to, do? I'm not just willing to do anything anymore for money. So that is part of it. We do hear from our members frequently that they've been in a career that they're charging hard at, like they're like, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they reach retirement age, or sort of traditional retirement age, like between, depending on who you work for, it's like between 55 and 65, and they want to retire, but they want to retire for anywhere from 3 months to a year to kind of reset, and then they want to get back into the workforce. Sometimes that's because and we've seen this with inflation rising and asset values declining, that is financial. But we also hear just as frequently, almost like it's usually like a 1 percentage point below, the reasons for going back to work are because I want to give back, because I have talents, I still have things I want to do. And so there's lots of other non-financial reasons that our membership does decide to return working post 65. So those are all things that we hear from our members. We do hear that there's a lot of interest in flexibility. So, and this is true of any generation, right? But older generations probably have a little more ability to do part-time work, let's say, or, I've heard of, particularly in sort of engineering and utilities industries, they'll say, listen, we want you to come and work for us for 2 months out of the year when we're in our, worst crunch, or we're overhauling a system, and so there's lots of different flexibilities in terms of doing part-time work for folks 65 plus. And then the last thing I'll say real quickly is just, hanging up your own shingle, right? Becoming a consultant and starting your own business. So there's so many ways that, you can retire just to have a quick break and then rethink, rewire. That's what we're talking about, right? So rethink what you want to do and what aligns better with your values.
Okay, thank you for that, both Matt and Heather. So I'm going to move to John and Trez next. John, so you're currently an adjunct professor.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what prompted you to go down the road of academia after having been in corporate communications.
Well, I've always been interested in giving back what I know, the knowledge that I have. And I thought the best way to do that would be working in higher education. I knew I wanted to do this even when I was working for major corporations. And I became the primary caregiver for my late wife, who passed away from breast cancer. And after that, I had to reassess, what do I want to do? And the answer came quickly: you want to teach, so now teach. I wanted to bring value, but on my own terms. And so I pursued that, and I've been teaching for 5 years now. But the other communications consulting piece, I think I'm very good at what I do, and I don't want to stop doing that. So I joined a virtual agency, and when that agency has work in my area of specialty, they call me and bring me in on a contract. So I ended a contract with a global firm that has headquarters in San Francisco and operations in South Africa. So I was dealing with both of those offices, but I was also able to teach at the same time, and I still have time to travel and relax and enjoy life. So I am, in my opinion, I'm in a sweet spot. I love where I am right now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I was just going to say, John, it sounds like you have the best of 3 worlds. Normally we say that we have the best of both worlds, but you've got the best of 3 worlds. Congratulations to you. Trez, we're coming to you.
Let's do it.
So, yeah, so Trez, you are currently the founder and CEO of Savor, right? Did
That's
I get
correct.
that right?
You did.
But you had a former life that we may or may not be able to talk about. But tell us, you did mention that you were doing the coffee house for a while before you took it on full time. But tell us what that process was like for you to transition to doing, your coffee house full time, or running your coffee empire, should I say?
Empire. All right.
Hey, five locations in the Chicago market. That sounds like an empire to me.
Oh,
Right,
thank you.
Matt agrees with me.
Hey, if Matt says good, then it must be good then. um, it's interesting because I opened up my first coffee house in 2005, right after I got shot. I got shot in 2004 in an attempted carjacking. I just left work without getting into it. Anyway, I was in the process talking to some guys about building out one of the buildings I owned in Bronzeville. And after I got shot, when I recovered, it kind of gave me a new outlook on life. Like in a moment's instant, everything could be taken from you. So all this planning, like I'm gonna do this 5 years from now. In 10 years, I'm gonna do this. I said, you know what? As soon as I heal, I'm finna jump in right now. My daughter was on her way to college. I was building a home, and like I said, it was 2005. So in Bronzeville, it wasn't as glamorous as it is right now to say. It was still trying to, come to that point. So I opened a coffee house in a place that is not really set up for a coffee house. No foot traffic, no businesses, nobody there. But it's something I wanted to do because a buddy talked me into it. So I was doing that. I wasn't able to be there during the week, only on the weekends, because a lot of times I was either undercover at my job or I was doing grand jury and all that. But nobody knew I was a federal agent. So I had buddies and family that helped run it. So what I would do is I would do my job during the day or the night. Whenever I do it, I would come there if the place was closed, and I would be like a part-time custodian, part-time like accountant. We couldn't afford to do a lot of stuff. So I wore a lot of hats. And when doing that, if anybody's listening, it could take a toll on you. I had a family, I had kids, I had a job, and I had a business. So I kind of struggled. So from 2005 until I retired in 2019, for 14 years, I was doing both. And yeah, exactly. And the thing about it was what I learned during that, and I'll be brief, is that, you need a lot of help. You need people around you to have a certain skill set that can help you make it through. If not, you're going to go to an early grade from that silent killer, which is stress, high blood pressure, and all that other stuff. So when I retired, it seems like I put more time into the business, but I do it because it's mine, and I do it at my leisure. No one is telling me I got to kick in the door on this day. I need to fly to New York and buy a bunch of weapons or whatever it was. I was creating jobs and changing communities. And that is something I love to do. It had some value for me. And people say, you work harder now. No, it's not work. When you enjoy what you do, like my man John was saying, he in a sweet spot. Well, I ain't quite in that sweet spot like John, but my trajectory is taking me in that direction. And because of doing things in the community, creating jobs, and being that visionary that we can do something different than be a ball player or a rapper or something, we can own our own. That kept me going. So after I retired, like you said, rewired, I went all in, and I started getting into not only the coffee house. Our motto is where coffee and community meet. But after the pandemic, we transitioned into we're more than just coffee. And I start focusing on, I used to set a 5 C's: crisp, clean, classy, consistent, customer service. I went to the E's after we got into the pandemic, and that is education, empowerment, entertainment, and the experience. So what I would do is bring financial advisors in the coffee house, talk to people about their money. I bring real estate people in that had worked with me because I was a big time real estate investor. Talk about trust and wills. So when your mom or your dad died, the stuff don't go to probate. So I was trying to educate while you was having that great coffee I was having shipped in from Africa. So it became to be a place where everybody wanted to be. Like, man, you not only can get coffee, you can get some conversation, you can do some networking, you can get some education, you can get a little politics. So that's where we at now. And I'm working on that sweet spot. Like John, I struggle with the balance piece as far as putting myself on my calendar and doing more for me, because I'm just all in.
So, Heather, it sounds like Trez just hit on every single data point that you talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that when you were talking, Trez, and I was really struck by your resilience and your ability to leverage your network in order to bring that success to bear over the course of years. We know that older entrepreneurs have more success in general. So the sweet spot for entrepreneurs is like mid 40s to mid 50s in terms of starting a business, because usually older people have more networks, they have richer networks, or they also just have brought a lot of experience from their past careers. So I mean, for you to start a coffee shop in a place with no foot traffic and be here 15 years later, to me is massively impressive. I don't know how I would do that. And so I think that really reflects this wisdom and this resilience and this grit that does take time to develop over the course of a year. And all that wisdom and experience is cumulative.
Thank you. Very kind.
John, you mentioned that you always knew that teaching was something that you wanted to do down the line. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you transitioned to that? What were some of the steps that you had to take, to identify a position and any and Trez, I'm going to ask you this question too, in terms of any training or information gaps that you might have had.
I knew I wanted to teach, and early on, when I was around Matt's age, I was speaking at conferences and writing professional articles, and my background is largely in PR and communications. So I had a broad network there, and soon I was invited to serve on the Public Relations Advisory Council for the University of Florida. And so that broadened my network with professionals, and a requirement was that you had to come there on a weekend, a long weekend, and teach or share your knowledge in a total of 9 classes over a long weekend. I literally lost my voice going from one class to another. By the time I left, I could not talk. But it was very rewarding to stand in front of students and get the type of feedback and response where they came up and asked me questions. And I knew right then that's what I want to do. So that just continued in me. And then I went back to grad school in my 50s. And being in that classroom environment just fired me up even more. And then I moved to Charlotte, and I networked at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, where I met a professor who introduced me to 2 other professors who asked me to pretty much audition in one of their PR classes. And they said, bring some type of lesson for our class. We want to see what you can do. And I wanted it so bad. I did it. They watched and said, okay, you can teach next semester. So it's really the fire and the passion you have for something. It just comes through, and it's nerve-wracking, but you gather those nerves to fuel you on and to push you on to excel. And I've been doing it now for 5 years, and I've had students come back and tell me they've enjoyed my classes. And I've had students not come back and say they've enjoyed my classes. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's where I need to be right now, and I look forward to continuing to do it. But it was that networking and getting that spark early on that never diminished over the years.
Matt, as well as Heather, I wonder if there's any data that you have seen or are seeing that talks about the training that people are seeking out in order to rewire.
Well, I don't have a specific data point, but I do have some signals. So we have companies like Skillshare or Fiverr. You have LinkedIn Learning. There's a lot of different services that are really focusing on helping people unlearn and reskill. And that has been something that has been on the rise lately. And that's what I can point to. Heather, hopefully, maybe you have some actual data points.
No, not actual data points, but I can tell you that in talking with employers, this is heavy on their minds, right? We know that the World Economic Forum back in October of 2020 released a report on the something like 40% of workers' current skills will change over the next 5 years. And so that's one data point I can come up with, but that requires a wholesale almost reskilling of the entire workforce. It's daunting to employers, it's daunting to employees. And so one of the things that I'm working on is trying to make sure that older workers are not left out of the reskilling conversation. But in terms of the skills landscape is pretty diffuse. So you asked, Deborah, what types of training are people looking for? And it's really kind of all over the map. But in general, I would say that there's two kind of basic categories. One is broad technical literacy. That does not mean you have to code things or be an electrical engineer or be like a tech bro, right? What it means is you have to have the kind of tech literacy that allows us to get on the StreamYard, to like adjust our our headsets and all that, like so we can collaborate remotely, right? That's tech literacy. So that's one thing. And then the other set of skills are what are often called soft skills, but I like to call human skills. These are the ones that are pretty much automation proof at the moment. And so those are really hard. Employers frequently, when they're surveyed, say they're the hardest ones to find or at least to validate. And those are things like judgment making, sense making, like what you do, Matt, sense making. And then things like leadership, just knowing how to read a room, influence and persuasion. These are all things that skills that are kind of in high demand that employers are looking for. The good news is that older workers tend to have those in a lot, not exclusively, younger workers have them too, but so those soft skills and then that sort of basic technical literacy, there's no job that doesn't involve some degree of interacting with technology. So I hope that helps, but
No,
in terms of specifics, it's all over the map.
Yeah, it's all over the map. And I was just curious whether, John mentioned that he went back to grad school in his 50s. And so that's one way of sort of filling in a skill gap or information gap, to prepare oneself to be effective in whatever the next chapter is. So I was just curious as to whether the data pointed to anything further about that. I think, and I see it a lot, and I've done it myself, right? So when I left the advertising agency world, I decided to go into my business full time, and like Trez, I wasn't kicking in doors, but I was crisscrossing the country. And one day I was like, you know what? I can't do another day trip to LA. It that doesn't work. You take the 5:30 flight out and take the 7 o'clock flight back. It will, yeah. Even Matt is making faces, and Matt, I was much older than you at the time, and but while I was doing that, I took myself through a process to identify what it was I wanted to do next, because I knew the day was coming that I was going to wake up and say, you know what, I'm out. So, I was trying to think ahead and prepare ahead, and it took myself through a process to identify what that is. And John, like you, right now I'm sort of in a sweet spot, right? Because I kind of work on the projects I want to work on, and I work at the pace that I want to work. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many people are thinking along those lines, right? So as opposed to just quitting, right? Just quitting their job and then looking to jump into something else without having taken the time to think about what's needed and what their information gaps or training gaps might be. So that's what was driving that question, Heather. Let's move to success, because the name of this series is Success in the Second or Third Act. So, John and Trez, you're in your second act. Has the definition of success changed for you?
Trez, you want to go
Yeah,
first? Yes,
I'll take a
please.
stab at it.
All right.
I, anytime I speak or talk to people, I always say success is relative. You know, some people put a monetary value on it. Some put something other than money, like, peace of mind, serenity. It depends on what you value success as. For me, I think success changes. It's like a fluid document for me. For me, it was just keeping the lights on and the doors open at one time, when it was very hard. After the pandemic, it was just being able to not only keep the lights on the doors open, but be able to sustain this tsunami that was coming and come through on the other side. That was success to me, because small, medium, and large businesses got crushed and some will never recover. In my mind, success was, if I can get through this, not if, when I get through this would be a stage of success for me. Now, there's other successful things for me. I want to be able to have all my employees have a livable wage where they can own their own home, possibly become their own business owner, and have health care and life insurance. That's something I pride myself on, and having a retirement, a 401k. I know that's probably a lofty goal, but that's my definition of success. So it moves at different times depending on what's injected into the formula. Nobody know about the pandemic. Now we have things like supply chain issues, inflation going through the roof. Everybody wants a job, but nobody wants to work. I mean, and that's in every industry, hospitality, construction. I have buddies that are doctors, so they can't even get nurses to come to work. I don't understand it, but it may change. My main thing is I want to stay focused on creating jobs, changing communities, and get to the point where I can say I'm writing real big checks for my employees. Because if I can write them big checks, I made an analogy before to one of my employees. He always bragged on Michael Jordan and all them, how much money they made. I said, how much you think the owner makes if he can pay him one person that much? That's what you want to be. You want to be that person writing them checks. So with that being said, I'll just end with this. Success to me is all of that I just said in that ball, and teaching my employees is more than just being a registered person or a barista. It's learning decision making, problem solving, conflict resolution, how to prioritize. This stuff they don't teach you in school. Empathy, compassion, having a sense of listening skills. So I kind of do all of that stuff, and it's not measurable at times. Some of this stuff that I look at as success, you can't measure. So I hope I kind of answered the question, but that's what I kind of gauge success on. And it's always moving. It's always moving for me.
Actually, there's a follow-up question for you, John. I'm coming right to you right after this. But Trez, what, if anything, in your previous career assisted you in your entrepreneur journey?
A couple things I didn't mention, but I was in the Marine Corps before I got my job with the government. And, you learn a lot about fortitude, discipline, structure, willpower, and all that. And them the kind of things, you can't learn in school. You can't order it off Amazon. You can't go to Walmart and snatch it off a shelf. It has to be instilled in you. You know what I'm saying? You can't teach a person heroism. You can't teach them courage, So those things have to be in you, and then somebody could bring it out in you. So being in the military really helped me with structure. I'm a young dad. My son is 41 and my daughter's 36. I'm 59. I had my son when I was 17. I said that to say I had to grow up quick. And that means responsibility, learning about money, learning about, doing what's best for your family. That helped me. Becoming a federal agent, of course, when you work for the federal government, paperwork, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, going over stuff consistently. So a combination of the military, being a young dad, being a Fed, and just everyday living, being married 40 years, I learned a lot from that, Trust me, I could probably write a book. So it's been a compilation of a lot of things. It's a cocktail with all of that thrown in it, and the fact that what helped me make it through, and this they call these Pugisms, things I make up. I believe nothing what I hear and half of what I see. That gets me through life. I investigate. I make sure I do my due diligence. I do research. And you know what? In God we trust. All else bring data.
Would you repeat that for the people in the back, please?
Hey, in God we trust. All else bring data. You gotta love it.
Oh man, that was a good one. John, you want to follow that at all?
Well, let me say this about that. Trez, you are already successful based on everything you've said. And I want you to know Walmart will end up selling willpower and strength and listening ability. They sell everything. So don't put it past them. A motivator for me, quite honestly, was my corporate life. I was in corporations for, nearly 30 years, and I loved what I did in public relations and communications because it's very creative, and you're dealing with a lot of energy from others and design, and it was incredible. But what I did not like was the corporate politics. I've been a manager, I've been a director, I've been a vice president, and every step of the way, the politics ratcheted up. And that was a motivator for me that I need to do something else after I leave here. People could look at me and say, John is very successful, he keeps moving up the ladder, but I didn't necessarily feel successful when I'm fighting internal politics and wars. That weighs on you. I would bring that stress home, and my late wife would say, no, you need to leave that at the door because we're not dealing with that here. You need to deal with that, get it straightened out. But when you come here, we're family. And so she kept the perspective there. And even my current lady, she does the same thing, because you can get wrapped up in things and you lose sight of what's important. So that motivated me to move to a point of success where now I do think I'm successful on my own terms. I'm consulting, I'm teaching, I'm traveling, I'm being a father, I'm being a friend, I'm learning new things. Even where I'm teaching now, Loyola University in New Orleans, I shut my home down in North Carolina and moved here. I'm living here for 4 months to teach here because I love it so much. And my lady and my neighbors, they're watching my home, and I get to do what I love here and just get a sense of what it's like to be a full-time professor at a wonderful university. I don't regret it at all. It's part of my growth, and it continues to make me feel successful.
So, John, if I might, I'm going to distill down everything you just said in the words of one of my clients. You are living the dream.
Well, I think
Are you sure there aren't politics in university jobs? It seems to me like there would be.
Actually, there is, but because I'm only temporary, I think they're like, we'll leave him alone. We'll let him believe he's fully engaged.
Right.
Leave him alone. So I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I just don't feel it. I don't see it. Everyone has embraced me, and I'm a guest. So that can make a difference too.
That makes a big difference. We have a question from someone in the audience that wants to would like us to expound on something, Heather, that you talked about, and that was some of the findings from the World Economic Forum about soft skills. And so the question is, Do you have to have these soft skills to sustain oneself in the fields in which they would like to grow? I'm thinking yes,
Yeah.
across the board. As a coach, I can tell you, I come across and I work with a lot of people whose soft skills have not only have they not been developed, they've not been discovered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. It's not enough just to have technical skill, but how do you lead people? What is your leadership brand? How do you want to show up? How do people perceive you? Right, all of those things. And John, as you pointed out, they don't teach you that in school. That's part of the real life lessons that you get when you step out of the classroom and into the real world, as it were. Heather, in your data, have you come across anything that suggests that soft skills are not as important?
No, no. I mean, they just continue to grow in importance. So the surveys I'm thinking about are PwC does an annual survey of CEOs, and when they include a question in that survey on like what are your top skills, the top 5 skills almost always have 3 to 4. What we're talking about, these soft skills like leadership, like the ability to make judgments, and so on. If you Google, it's called the Future of Jobs 2020 report, I think, and it's just World Economic Forum Future of Jobs. But that there's a really great chart in there that shows the top 25 skills over the next 15 years. So that would be 2020 to 2035. And you don't get to a hard technical skill until number 7. So it's things like resilience, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, again, negotiation and influence, things like that. So there's a couple of hard technical skills on that list, but of the 15, the majority of them are soft skills. So yeah, you definitely need to keep them up. I think, getting a mentor or being a mentor is a way to develop those types of skills. Anybody can be a mentor, right? One of the things that's really great about mentoring in the last number of years is there's this movement to have younger people mentor older people in certain skills that the older worker might need to sort of beef up on. So anybody can teach and anybody can learn. We all have something to bring in that regard. But I think the process of doing that develops your leadership skills. So that's one way to do it. But you always need to be paying attention to that and understanding what your strengths are. John, clearly communication is one of yours.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have every single soft skill on the list, but if you kind of know, like, okay, I'm actually quite good at, sales, for example. I would be terrible at sales, but some people are really good at it, and it's fantastic that they are. So I do think you need to pay attention to them and continue nurturing them.
If okay.
Go ahead,
If
John.
I can say one thing, also part of those soft skills is emotional intelligence, where you make those connections with people when you meet them and develop the right relationships that can help you be successful, but you can also help those people. And I think Trez is a perfect example of that. What he described, who he's worked with, how he's built his empire of coffee shops, that takes emotional intelligence. And we're looking at the perfect poster child for that. So I applaud you, Trez, for your success. And I do think you're successful. And what you've done to make those connections is phenomenal. But that is another soft skill, emotional intelligence, that needs to be incorporated into that.
Thanks. I appreciate that. If I could just add one quick thing, because you hit on something that's really important. To be able to communicate and network with people. A lot of people was trying to figure out how was I managing to keep, well, at the time I had 4 stores. I'm about to open up a 5th one now, but how did you manage to keep 4 stores open during the pandemic and everybody else is dying? Well, it was a combination of things. The community was so appreciative of what we had brought in there as far as this safe space where you can go and listen to jazz. You can come in there and network. You could come in there and do homework. People done started their businesses there. People done proposed there. People done did their thesis. I mean, you name it. And that's something that makes me think I need to get some of these people to put stuff on my website. Some of them, the things that's happened there. But what helped me to get over, and I'll share this with you guys, is when wasn't a whole lot of revenue coming in, and we still had to pay a mortgage, light, gas, insurance, taxes, payroll for those employees that was there. There were people in the community that were coming in and putting money into the tip jar to make sure them employees get paid. And I'm going to tell you why they did this. When all this pandemic hit and everything, they was talking about how bad it was for all the people that was victims. Me being a first responder, I said, this is going to affect firemen, policemen, emergency room people and all that. And I knew a ton of them that came in a coffee house. So I put like $2,000 on a gift card. And I told my employees, you see anybody in smocks in a uniform, you let them know that we are glad they're out there taking care of the people that are out there dying, and that we're not able to go to funerals. We can't visit our grandma in the hospital and all that. And nobody knew I was doing it until one of these doctors came in from the University of Chicago. He said, this sounds like a Trez thing. And he spread the word all out in Hyde Park, Bronzeville. And before you knew it, it was just a frenzy of people putting money on his gift card. It was close to $10,000 on the gift card. And I'll end with this. That money was on a gift card, but it was put into our account. So it allowed me to pay my employees. It allowed me to pay a few bills. And all my vendors who I had relationships with was, Trez, we know you're going to get through us. Anybody do. Don't worry about paying us for the next 6 months. No interest. And people don't know this. I'm sharing this with you guys because of my relationship, my ability to be humble, my ability to have what you said, that emotional connection and care about people. It makes a difference because the decision makers and the people that I call the gatekeepers, if they got a relationship with you and they know you about humbleness, you care about people. And some of them knew that I house, like above my coffee house, I take care of disabled vets and recovering addicts. I pay their rent and I give them utilities. I've been doing that 32 years. A lot of people didn't know that either. The few people that knew that, once the word spread around, that's what kept me in business. Not that I'm that brilliant or I'm this whiz. It was my relationships and my ability to understand sometimes you have to humble yourself. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Shut up. Sometimes just listen to what people going through. Lend an ear. You never know who that person is. That person love you. Go back. They tell a director who tells somebody who go on the bank, let's do something for this guy.
That is pretty awesome, Trez. That is pretty awesome. And I think a really great example of how soft skills translates into not only business, but revenue, right? So most people would underestimate the importance of soft skills. But I think your story just now just illustrated how important having the soft skills and the ability to build and sustain relationships you just don't know where it will lead you.
After Heather and John said that, I had to share that because I had the quintessential example of what they were talking about.
And even for you, John, going into academia, again, it was the soft skills.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like initially there weren't a whole lot of questions about your technical ability, but what they were able to perceive of you in certain settings. They got a sense of how you carry yourself, what your leadership brand is. And then they invited you to teach a class or teach 9 classes, as it were. And as Heather has already pointed out, that is one of the things or some of the things that employers not only are looking for, but are having a really difficult time attracting. But let me say this. So that's what employers are looking for. But as Trez just pointed out, if you're going into your own business, if you're going to leave your 9 to 5 and start your own business, it it's just as critical to have those soft skills, if not more so, because you then are responsible for generating the revenue that keeps you afloat. And those soft skills, and the ability to connect with people and to understand people. I love what you said, Trez. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. and, um, and be able to listen for how you can be of service to people, because
Yes.
that's the
Right there.
key. It can't be it's not all about you, although a lot of people would like to think that it is.
Mm.
Matt, what does the future hold for this conversation?
Yes. So the future, I think we're hitting it on the T here. One thing that I wrote down here is that emotional intelligence leads to good soft skills, which leads to good hard skills. And I think when it comes to the future of work, especially when it comes to my generation thinking about the future, it really is about how are we able to sustain good relationships that then turns into good business. I always go back to my favorite quote by Leo Burnett: what is good for people is good for business. And what we've been learning recently is that we have to break away from traditions to be able to lean into innovation. And we can lean into a future based off of who we are now, not based off of traditions that were set in place by people who didn't have us in mind. So another thing that I'd like to talk about with the future of work as well is really getting a handle on our mental health. Because a lot of institutional things affect our I statements. So I need to do this, I need to do that, when we have institutions who are not providing basic social safety nets for people. So we have to think about class as well when we think about the future of work and how that impacts people's ability to show up day by day and also be able to imagine a future that is better than the one that they have now. So future of work, get a handle on your mental health, get a handle on your communities, and then you'll be able to innovate for the future.
One of the things that strikes me about this entire conversation is that, and some of us already know this, if nothing else is constant, it's change, right? And
Indeed.
people are really resistant to change. But one of the things that strikes me about this entire conversation is that the ability to change, and having the flexibility to change, is becoming even more important than it's ever been. Um, Anybody have any thoughts about that? Am I just reading the tea leaves incorrectly, or
No,
what?
in fact, something like half of all jobs, like, so when you ask a child, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
That question is no longer very practical, because half the jobs haven't even been invented yet that will be jobs when they get there. And increasingly companies want to know, you have the ability to learn. Show me that you can learn, because I can't even predict what the skill needs are going to be in 3 to 5 years. So the ability to adapt and to learn and to be resilient are other things that companies really look for. So you're absolutely right. Change is the constant, and it seems to be speeding up. So
And that would suggest to me, Heather, that for people contemplating what might be next for them, that they really need to be more than a little curious, right? To your point, that if the jobs of the future, if half of them haven't even been developed yet, it suggests to me that people should, or need to develop the ability to sort of see around the corner, as a friend of mine would say, see around corners, or anticipate what's coming over the horizon, so that they can um, be in position, if you will, or understand what the information or knowledge gaps might be.
yeah, and I think this is also really good news for conversations around equity, because we we need to, it used to be that the 4-year university degree was like a proxy for a set of skills. You gain those skills in a 4-year period or 6-year period, and then you work, and then you retire. And we're just not in that. Our lives are too long, and things are changing too quickly for us to have those neat buckets of phases in our lives. And so, and employers are starting to really take this to heart. Like, do we need a degree requirement for this job? We need someone who can demonstrate that they have, 3/4 or 2/3 of the skills, but they also can learn. And so I just would put that out there as well.
Yeah, I think it's being teachable is very, very important. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to add on to what you were saying, Deborah, that the truth of the matter is if you are resistant to change or will not change, you will be left behind. That is my belief.
Yeah, I have a saying I use with my employees. You're either going to adapt or you're going to become extinct like a dinosaur. You got to be creative, innovative. You got to reinvent, pivot, do whatever you need to do. But you don't see many dinosaurs in the street. You may see it on the Game of Thrones, and all this and dragons. But I'm telling you right now, and that's why I brought a lot of millennials in to run. My VP of strategic planning is younger than my daughter. My daughter runs my operations. They see things through a different set of eyes. They got their hand on the pulse. Not that I'm that old. But I understand that it's a whole new generation coming up. What are their needs? What are they wants? What do we need to get in front of them? What's going to differentiate us from these other coffee houses? And by no means are we out of the woods, because there's still a lot of challenges out here. I said, but like she said, looking around that corner, I'm always looking at, them other businesses' annual reports. What are they doing? Why are they doing this? Let's do something. Let's see. They need to reinvent the wheel. So I agree with all of that. This is real powerful conversation.
Last thoughts from anyone? Matt, Heather, John? We've got 3 minutes.
I'll leave with one of my Pugisms again. I have this saying: you deserve what you tolerate. Whatever you're dealing with, if you don't like it and you continue to deal with it, you deserve it until you do something different. And that's in anything: relationship and business, education. Make a change if you want to do something different.
And I just tag on to that. My life mantra really is #live this life. You only have one. You better make the most of it while you're here.
For me, I would say that the future of work is intergenerational. So get comfortable with younger mentors, and for younger people, get comfortable with older mentors and having that flow of information back and forth, because that's going to be key to better communities in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the kind of richness that is inherent in intergenerational knowledge, if you're sharing it, is huge, because Trez is like, I have this ability to be curious about what other companies are doing, but I'm also going to bring in the perspective of the millennials so that they can help me. That combination is so powerful.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for a really great discussion. Of course, we haven't solved all of the world's problems when it comes to the future of work and retiring and rewiring, but I think that we've given people enough to think about and help them formulate what their first steps might be as they think about what they will do next. And I'm going to turn it back over to Miss Yvonne right now.
Well, thank you, Deborah, and thank you to all of the panelists. Excellent job. I have my, my walking papers ready. I did want to thank all of our viewers for joining in, and stay tuned to Moby Symposium for our upcoming holiday shows, but certainly we won't see you before midterm elections are up, and we want to make sure that everybody remembers just how important it is for us to exercise our right to vote. This is our opportunity to help shape change, create what we want our social agendas to be. So please Get out there and vote. Vote early. Early voting is open across the nation. So no matter where you are, please exercise your right to vote. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great evening.